Hi there, welcome to another episode here on Bustthenet. On today's show, we're going to take a look at player traits. Yes, these are those unique little things that players have that define them from the rest, and they can also severely screw your tactic over. I'm not joking, I'm serious. Okay, they're player traits. They're something that you need to understand the game. They like, in the old days, we used to call them PPMs. Right? And I used to get these requests from lots of people, like, what's the perfect player traits for this? What are the player traits that are needed for this position? Frankly speaking, if you're coming into the game for the first time, and if you don't know all this, don't pick any player traits. Just let the tactics and the player roles breathe and have fun. Then slowly try and understand what player traits do. Secondly, your ass man is always going to come and give you advice on player traits that a person has got to take. If I were you, I'd step back and ask myself, what could that player trait possibly do to my tactic? That's the first thing that you need to do. So, player traits have been around for a long time. We used to call them player preferred moves. I hate calling it player traits. I'm just going to say PPMs because this is all these old farts like me. That's how we refer to them. So these are PPMs. Now, what are player traits in essence? So if you go to your training and go to any of your players who doesn't, in my case here, I'll pick one player up, Pascal Costa. It doesn't have any training. So if you go to this, you come to this screen from the training panel and you can choose, ask your coaches, because coaches are going to have defending, tactical, attacking, all the mental ones as well. So ask these coaches to, work on PPM. So I normally like my attacking coaches who handle things like finishing, passing. I like my defending coaches to do defending stuff. Any attacking movement stuff, I get my attacking coaches to do. So here we got an attacking movement, so I can pick one of them, and then we got all these PPMs here. Now, this is the interesting about PPMs. If you look at all your PPMs, you'll notice some of these PPMs are the same as some of your play instructions in your tactic. For example, here, there you go. Move into channels on a regular basis. Wow, voila. We do. So what happens then? So what happens when you have a player trait that is also a PI? Now, if you have a player trait on a player like this, Bettino, he's playing as a DLF on support, and he has that assume he has move into channels as a PPM, and you chose a role that does not require him to move into channels. His PPM takes precedence. What this means is he will still move into channels because his PPM makes it so. So he will do it. So whenever you make any kind of a tactic, these are things that you need to bear in mind. It has got important implications of certain other PPMs. So it does not dive into tackles. So assume now you give your whole team does not dive into tackles. And you decided, I want everybody to tackle hard. Guess what? These 4 guys are not going to do it because they don't dive into tackles. I'm not going to give him a bone crunching tackle. I'm just going to be a normal defend. So it's not going to really change the way you tackle. So if I were you, I'll be very, very careful about how I use my PPMs, because PPMs they override PIs, and PIs are of course greater than TIs. So that's something that you need to bear in mind. Now, are there any specific PPMs that are great for certain roles? Well, I won't say that there is a formula out there, cut and dried formula. What I would recommend is, if you have a system and you like to, it all depends on the kind of football that you want to play. In my Torino save, I've got a 4-1-3-2 where I wanted to create a very Italian feel to my tactic, where I have an Andrea Pirlo kind of playmaker playing from deep, threading passes, dictating the tempo. So guess what I did? I gave him dictate tempo and told him to look for killer ball. So if you know the flavor, then by all means. But the ability of a player to learn the player trait depends on whether he is maybe playing the position, the coach giving it to him, determination. Finally, whether he has the right mix of attributes. So if you want to give a player play killer ball and his passing in vision is like 10 and 8, chances are he's not going to be able to learn it because he doesn't have the attributes for it. So attributes play a part. So you just can't go there and just, I want his player traits. I want him to play killer ball. Then, I don't care. Why is the coach not teaching him? Why is he not learning? It's probably down to his attributes as well. So you need to understand that. Now, certain things, there's also other things as well. Like sometimes when a tactic does really well and you've been going great guns with the tactic and you decide to sell the player off, make sure that you understand the player who's being sold off. One of my friends, he had this great 4-3-1-2, banging a lot of goals, and he had a playmaker here, and he was really the linchpin of his whole system. But he received an offer that he couldn't refuse, like 100 million, I think, and he had to sell his playmaker off. Comes up to me and then after tells me, my new guy who came in, I thought my tactic would be fine, you know, but my whole tactic is not collapsed. My team can't win anymore. Then I said, so okay, let's check out the playmaker you sold. So the playmaker you sold comes deep to get the ball and plays killer passes and moves into channels. So his playmaker was a very really dangerous kind of player who had those kind of PPMs that linked up his roles, because these PPMs, they kind of like, you know, they're like PIs in a way. So you want to make sure that you understand how they work with all the other roles around them. So the next time you have a successful tactic, always check out what PPMs are in play, which is one of the reasons why I always tell people whenever they start a game, don't give your players PPMs unless you know what you're doing. If you're not sure, and if you are the sort of person that's gonna ask me the question, what kind of PPMs are good for certain roles, then don't pick PPMs. There's no such thing as a PPM that's good for a certain role. It depends on how you want to play your system. If you want your playmaker to dictate tempo and keep the game, to have that switch on when you want to, because you're the kind of player that doesn't play at a very high tempo game, and you let your playmakers to decide. You play on a normal tempo, but you want your playmaker to flip the switch, then dictates tempo is good for that kind of a system. But if your tactic is a direct tactic, you're hitting on the counter all the time, why would you want a playmaker to have dictates tempo then? Doesn't make any sense. So a lot of the time, the flavor of your tactic is the one that calls out for PPMs or player traits. I'll give you another example. Now here we have a player who's got a wingback. Now he's a wingback on support. Very often when you have a wingback on support, you'll find that they are waiting for the ball somewhere on the pitch. They were on the shoulder of another player, and if he doesn't have good dribbling, then when the ball gets to him, he tries to dribble past somebody, he loses the ball. It's very common. We all see it in our games. So what can we do? This is a time when certain PPMs are really cool. One of the coolest PPMs in the game, and it's one of my favorites, and I almost always give it to my fullbacks or my wingers, is this PPM. It's called knocks ball past opponent. Knocks ball past opponent can be given if your player has got decent acceleration and can get past players, and he's got decent first touch. I think he's got 11, so it's okay. So what is calling out to him largely is acceleration. He's got absolutely shite dribbling, average first touch, cannot cross the ball. So I just gave him to knock the ball past opponent. He gets off, then he might have time to find the pass. Then he has less pressure to pass it to somebody because his passing is also dog shit. Okay, so it's only 10. So I gave him the PPM. So off he goes. He can knock the ball past opponent, get away from players, and then he can always find a pass for somebody. So it helps. And in certain cases, some of my friends have come up and asked me, how do I manage to get one of my wingbacks to get so many assists? And I tell them, well, that wingback has got knocks the ball past opponent. He just bombs on the flank. You know what I do? I lock down the other flank and I tell the other wingback, you go running off and making crosses. We only want this dude to do it. So I make an entire tactic around a specific player, and I design the PPM, one PPM for him, knocks ball past opponent. So I tell him, dude, when the ball gets to you, all you got to do is knock it and use your acceleration, get out, and maybe we can get a lot of quality balls in. One of my friends took that advice, and he actually went and got a player in with 17 acceleration, 16 dribbling and 15 for crossing. And I told him, and he got absolutely no tackling in him, and I told him, dear God, you gotta give him that PPM. So guess what, he's done it, and now he's just banging in assists for his team. I will do another video on how you can get the best out of your players for the roles that you want them to play. But for the purposes of this video, and as far as player traits are concerned, one of the best player traits in the game for players who've got great acceleration, who have a decent cross on them, is actually the knocks ball forward PPM, especially for wingers and fullbacks, because it helps them buy the extra yard for a good delivery. In my 4-4-2, I've got a CM on attack, and it's this player, Germano. So I was playing a game, and this is probably my fastest substitution in history, 12 minutes. So I was watching this game, and I had it on attack, and then I realized one thing: they're literally holding hands. And I actually wanted my CM on attack to be a lot higher, somewhere around here, and instead I found him holding hands with Zuniga. And we had one transition where I noticed this happening, and I was telling myself, "Nah, this is not going to work because I need him to be a bit more further up the pitch instead of coming deep to get the ball." And guess what? I went to check his player traits, and he had exactly that in his game. He had comes deep to get the ball. So I realized very quickly that we had to change him. So I took him off and brought on another player. He was dropping deep so much, it made it a problem for me to play a 4-4-2, even with me pushing an inverted wing back. He was just hanging out with the inverted wing back half the time. Too deep for us to do anything. He was nowhere linking up play with my two forward players, so he had to be substituted, and it took me less than 10 minutes to decide this. The substitute we brought on, he didn't have that player trait in him, so he was a better link man for midfield to attack frequently, not dropping deep to get a ball, instead supporting the play, then quickly moving further forward so that he could add something to our final third attack. And this is exactly what I wanted. It was missing because the previous player, Germano, had comes deep to get the ball, and we had this period of time where my two strikers were starved of good service. PPMs can be very seductive. I'll tell you that much. And I can say one other thing. PPMs can be fantastic to use, but how do you use PPMs? Do not use PPMs out the gate like as if it's some kind of a magical formula for your tactic. Nah. Understand your tactic first, and then use PPMs to enhance a player so that he doesn't do stupid things. For example, fullbacks who can't cross or can't, you always get beaten by a player because they're too close to him, but they have great acceleration and knocks ball forward is a great PPM. And one other PPM as well. You know, your ball winning midfielders get a lot of yellow cards because they've got a PI there that says tackles harder. Tell them not to dive into tackles. Problem solved. What about 4-4-2s, which have got very narrow players hanging about like this? Gets further forward. So there are certain PPMs in the game that can help your tactic overall. But this is the unique thing, is how you use the PPMs. First, you need to understand your tactic before you jump into PPMs. Players that can learn up to 5 PPMs, and they don't necessarily need to learn everything when they're 18. In fact, I used to do that because it was fun. Now I don't. I wait until my tactic plays itself out. I know my system really well. The players have developed well enough for me to go, okay, fine, I'll give him this PPM. Then I'll give him that PPM. I'm extremely selective now with PPMs. And it's one way of playing the game. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of how to use player traits in the game. And I keep calling them PPM, so please forgive me. I can't help myself. You know, I've been playing this game ever since I was 20. I'm 50. It's 30 bloody years. So old habits die hard. So if you have any questions, please look me up on Twitter at Bustthenet or addicted2fm.com, my website. Once again, I'd like to thank all my patrons that continue to support this channel. You guys make these kind of shows very, very possible for everybody out there. So have a good one. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.